Hello, viewers. Welcome to yet another episode of the To Be Quite Honest podcast, your go to podcast for deep conversations around the world of real estate and lots more. Right? Today, we're going to be touching on something very, very important, a topic uh, that everybody should be concerned about,
Yeah,
a
of
topic
course.
that relates to that connects real estate and the environment. Right? So, I have with me a very special guest, one of the brightest minds, within mixed Africa.
Thank you.
His name is Osarogie.
Yeah,
Could you just tell our viewers a thing or two about you? Who are you? What
yeah.
you do?
Thank you, Ben, for having me on the
You're
show.
welcome.
My name is Osarogie Osage. I'm a design associate at Mixed Africa, and I think for the purpose of this show, in my department, I spearhead sustainable developments, adopting sustainable practices for our project, to be more environmentally conscious, more or less. Yeah, so that's
All
me in
right.
a nutshell.
All right. So the topic today is blueprint and balance, the art of creating sustainable real estate
Yeah,
projects.
yes.
Now, first of all, the word sustainability is not new to some of us,
Yeah.
but to some of the people who might be watching this video, they might not understand what that concept means. So, do you want to just touch on that a bit as
Yeah,
sort of
so
intro?
so sustainability is used in different contexts.
Okay.
Sometimes economics and even in real estate. Before we go into the whole green situation,
Okay.
like I'd say for Mixed Up, we have a land bank, and when they were designing that, they said they're building a sustainable city. What that meant in that sense was a situation where everybody that lives within that place, they don't need to go outside, so it can sort of cater for itself. Um, but in context with the whole environmental thing, they are both intertwined. But these days, we sort of hammer more on efficiency. So, the amount of energy you use, the amount of water you use, the amount of energy you even use to establish your real estate development. How does that contribute to things like global warming and the likes? Yeah, so I'll just keep it at that for sustainability.
All right, all
Yeah,
right. So very quickly, let's get into the main thing
no problem. Go for it.
now. So, sustainability experts like yourself,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you're talking within the real estate space,
yeah. No,
you always talk about green buildings,
yes, yes, yes.
right? So, are green buildings painted in
Of
green,
course not.
or if they are not,
Of
what
course
are
not.
they?
Of course not.
And what are they? Let's start from there first.
Okay, so green buildings, right? I'll give it like this. If you do anything in your building that's considered sustainable, you don't even know you did. So I'll give you an example. There's a trend now with energy efficient lighting. You go to the market, you don't see the old bulbs anymore. So once you put some bulbs in your building, you can say your building is green, right? I can pick up a screwdriver or attempt to fix something. It doesn't mean I'm an electrician. I have to go to school and be sort of have some sort of paperwork for it. So in my own terms, what I would recognize as a green building or project is something that's gone through some certain level of certification. You know, submitted the project under an internationally recognized sustainable board that can evaluate to say, okay, this project has hit a minimum standard. Evaluate how many strategies has been adopted, and they also sort of project compared to your conventional buildings, how much energy was used to establish and used to operate this building over a long period of time. So once they give you the different levels, I mean, if you cross the first bar, your building is considered green. But I can do certain things in my house. I can say my house is green, but if nobody vets it, then you know it's still green, but it's not recognized globally as green, so to speak.
So
Yeah.
I mean, why should we go green? There's been a lot of talk about sustainability practices in real estate, and every time they talk about that,
Okay.
they say we should go green. We should go green.
Yeah.
Why should we go green?
So it's very interesting. I'll give a bit of background to that from how I sort of came into the space. In university, I studied architectural environment engineering, and then and that
Nigeria here.
no, I studied in England, University of Nottingham, and so they sort of gradually started telling us about efficiency, solar, this, that. I just thought it was very interesting. Coming from Nigeria, where we have all these situations, and I understood the concept very clearly. So I did my master's in renewable energy and architecture, where they sort of showed us the impact. From one side, it's good practice. It's like, um, you know, it's just good practice. It's like neatness or just the way you comport yourself or the way you carry out your dealings. But on the other hand, in practice, when you buy property, it saves you a lot of money, right? So it's a win-win. The only downside is like the art of not spending too much money to achieve that same level of savings. Right? Some people spend so much buy solar panels that it doesn't necessarily mean that they might have over-designed, overspent. So it'll take them a longer period to get their money back from the savings. So um, yeah, so it's important at this point, yeah, as opposed to being environmentally conscious of what you're doing, it actually saves you money. I'll just leave it at that. I think people should focus. If people hear that, they understand. I'll give you a little bit of analysis. If I buy a property of 30 million naira, I was on band B, C a few weeks ago. Last week they put us on band A. So I was paying about 100K, 200K a month for electricity, with NEPA and gen everything. But now, probably we spend like
600K or
800K. It doesn't make any sense. So if I invest in solar and all of that stuff, compared to the grid, it will be cheaper to operate. I might even be running for free, but it's going to cost me a lot of money up front. So imagine I paid 30 million for a property, and every month I'm spending 600K. So in a year, in 10 months, I'm doing 6 million. In about 5 years, the money I spend to operate my house is more than the property. So if I'm able to beat down that cost, I can use it to invest in other properties. So if you look long term, it's very important. We don't know what the energy prices will be like tomorrow. So I think it's a way of just crystallizing your expenditure.
And I can totally relate. I mean, even before the whole migration to band A and all of that, I have some clients who spend as much as 800K on a monthly basis.
Straight,
That's been going on for a couple of months.
Ridiculous.
Right now. So now that there's growing awareness for sustainability practices in real estate, so what are some sustainability best practices as far as real estate is concerned?
Okay, so if I'll try and tie it to the way the world works itself. So we don't really need to manage the world manages itself. So you pay, the sun does plants, just and then you don't really need to spend money to take care of the planet, really spend cash. But the thing is that with regards to your house, very simple. Your light bulbs, if you use the conventional thing, you spend X amount of money. But if you use energy saving, you can save your entire energy bill for about 20% just for your lights alone. Your ACs as well.
Can you let me just
Go for it.
They talk about sustainability,
Yeah.
right? Has to make sense for people for us to see like mass adoption.
Yes.
Now, on the first point, you're saying we should replace the old bulbs we're used to, with more sustainable bulbs.
Yes.
Now, and that's because that would help drive down our energy costs.
In the long run, yes.
Okay, so how does driving down my energy costs help the environment?
Okay, I'll give you an example. If I'm driving from Ikoyi to Lakowe now, I'm using a V12 engine, right? Covering the same distance, or I use a Toyota covering the same distance. I'm not going to fly because I just enjoy the drive, it Benz, whatever. But I'm not being efficient, right? I'll drive a Benz, right? If it's a green Benz, I'll drive that too. But the reality is just using what you need to get the job done. I'd say sustainability in itself is just being efficient. Do you understand? You call it green, but if you look at the entire how you're pumping water, you're using power for that. And keeping the house cool, you're using power for that, and you're using maybe two horsepower AC for a place that needs one. Even your sizing, that's sustainable practices, not just sustainable equipment, but the sizing, the ratings, all those little things, all in all save. People do it already, but they're not conscious. And if I put all these things in place, I'm not going to be calculating the next 5 years. If I did it the other way, I've saved 10 million. You just go with the flow. But when you go to your friend's house and they're saying that he spent 10 million and you spend 2 million, then you start to see the benefits. But the capital cost typically, it's not easy, but it's with time it will become clear to everybody.
So that means sustainability on its own doesn't just pertain to the environment, to nature. It also concerns the ability for you as the homeowner to continue doing something.
Of course, a situation where you don't want to spend 100K, more than 100K, you can set some from your phone to say, look, try and keep everything down. It can give you warnings. You might not be conscious of these things yourself, unless only when you're buying the power and all whatnot. So I think the main thing about sustainability is how we utilize the equipment that we use to keep ourselves comfortable, and picking the right ones for the right uses. That also helps in tandem to, help us be more environmentally responsible. in
So
our daily practices.
apart from energy, what other?
So, um, mixed up, we just recently got Edge certification, which is it's a sustainable standard certification for projects, real estate, hospitality. But we got it for a middle income residential product, Marula Park, about 984 units, one, two, and three bedroom units, and it was very interesting. I know stuff about sustainability. I can put that in the design. That's fine. But what Edge does is that it tells you, did you do this? Did you do that? So it gives you guidelines on what to do, and then it scores you accordingly. Also projects how much you tend to save monthly, annually, and all of that. Edge helped a lot, right? So it helped to sort of help us focus on what we needed to get done. Edge breaks down sustainable practices into three parts. Energy savings, which is light bulbs, solar panels, and whatnot. Second is water savings, because water doesn't just come out your sink; it has to be pumped, treated. That uses energy as well, and then relates to the waste in the canal and all that. And then the final is embodied. So that's the energy used in constructing the building, right? I think there's a fourth aspect that monitors how much you consume over, say, a period of time. But yeah, but those three aspects: energy saving, water savings, and embodied energy savings. So type of building materials you use that help. Maybe if you use too much glass now, you're going to spend more on your cooling, because a lot of sun is coming in. So if you use blocks, or your windows are on the side that's not facing the sun, right, you don't use as much energy to cool yours. So all those little practices, they are able to go through your designs and score you accordingly. So
What are the economic benefits?
again, for me, it's a thing of, there's some very low hanging fruits. You can spend exactly the same amount of money you spend on your, say, residential development, and still get a cheaper. So it's the best practice is buying the right fittings, light fittings, and all of that. Adopting solar panels to reduce your diesel consumption if you are on diesel, or just coming off the grid completely. Like I said, in the long run, once you do that calculation of how much you spend initially and what you spend over a period of time, you see what the savings are, so to speak. And people are already adopting it anyways, because I mean, it's in people's pockets.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, like, how's the government pushing all of this? And are they, the government regulators? I mean, how are they pushing all of this? Are they encouraging it? Or are they still trying to
They are
catch
so
up?
there are lots of these sustainable conferences, and government officials come and just encourage it. But compared to the West, what I know is when I was in school, there was something we were doing. They said if you're a developer or you're a home builder, the government will give you about 20% of the cost of your, so that capital cost you're spending on your solar panel, the government will pay you 20% for it, and it's zero interest, so you pay over a period of time,
So
just
it's a
to
loan, yeah?
exactly, to cut down on your bills and all of that. But we don't do that here. I mean, the government a lot, right? But what I think the government can easily do, they're supporting with some little initiatives. I haven't seen any, because there are not that many green buildings. But what I think they should do is, certain things should not be allowed to, we shouldn't import certain types of things. So maybe set with ACs now, only inverter AC should be imported. Those little things sort of curb trend, where everybody, whether it's you certified or not, everybody's homes, because that's what's available in the market. It's happening with lights too. You go to the market, you're not seeing the old bulbs, you're seeing LED ones. So those are, so just stuff like that. I think they can encourage from the back and indirectly. And yeah, we could do a lot more, but to be honest, the government has a lot to do. And one big thing, if there was a way they could turn a big significant percentage of the grid to solar, then all in all, whether you know it or not, will be sort of more responsible.
So I hear some governors up north are planning to.
I'm sure they will. They're
set
smart.
up hectares and hectares of solar farms and all of that, and
Yeah.
supply power to the grid,
People.
and then distribute. So I think we're heading there.
Yeah, and they come away from diesel, which will even cost them
Yeah.
more to supply anyway, gas, so to speak.
So currently, you work with a real estate developer.
Yes,
right?
I do.
Now, as you've tried to implement some of these sustainability practices, what challenges have you had to overcome?
Marula Park was a bit. I knew, okay, yeah, we need to do this thing, but what you need to know is, as a real estate developer, these are like finance decisions. You can't just say I want to do this, that. It translates to the cost of the property. People can't buy it, But we did that rule of thumb, and we saw that when you're doing a large scale project and you implement certain practices, it sort of swallows it up. You don't really see maybe you have like 1,000 people now sharing a bill of like $1 billion, so to speak, maybe 100K or something like, or sometimes maybe 1 million. But that 1 million, they sort of enjoy it, and you have to be able to communicate it to them. That was the first bit. Second bit is if you are bulk buying. Normally, you go to the market and buy. But those guys in the market, they're going to some guys. Why not just cut through that? Because at every stage, typically there's 20%. So you have to be very rigorous. And the final thing is value engineering. So, reducing your size of windows, or you have big windows sometimes, but how much air do you really need? In design, there's a baseline. So we don't go, it's not like we create like a matchbox for people, but make sure that we're able to balance everything. So value engineering creates sort of a gap for the budget to expand and adopt some of these strategies. Other things like dual flush toilets, LED, they're exactly the same prices as things in the market. But the certification body just wants to know that you're documenting these things and you're following a design that they vetted that is okay. If nobody is sort of checking you went to school, you wrote the exam, but there's no result. Even if you passed it, you can't really get a job based on I know the job. Some people, if they question you at an interview and you know your stuff, they might get you in, but typically you might not even make it to the door if you don't have your certification. So I think
you just touched on something that many people might want to fight you from.
Yeah, please.
You said, people have big windows, but how much air do you want?
Yeah.
I think most people would rather have bigger windows than the tiny windows people see these days. Or is that also like one of your sustainability practices? Because if that's what it is, you need to count someone like me out.
So I'll give you an example now. It's the perception. In design, you see a lot of things where you see a boxy window, maybe some flats with square windows, but sometimes you see some really nice places with slim, slender windows. Now, it's still you have a nice view, top-down view, right? But you don't use as much materials as that bit. So it's not like we're slashing the windows into half, but it can be 30% less. Now, another thing is that...
Why?
So I'll give you an example. Window to wall ratio. Like I mentioned earlier, if you have a glass building, you're going to cool with 3 ACs, but if you just have enough, right, it takes more time for heat to enter through a block wall than glass. So first of all, I live in a nice house. ACs, the curtains are down. If I want to go out, I go to the balcony. When people are coming to my house, I want it to look nice. They're not saying that the windows must be big, right? But where your balcony is, you can have like top-down glass, but not just glass everywhere. And strategically, you can place the glass on the north-facing side, where the sun in Nigeria doesn't face, so you don't get direct sunlight coming into. So just those little practices. Exactly. They score you with those as well. Where you place your windows, not just the sizes as well.
So most people, myself inclusive, I can't exactly point to many projects that are standing today that meets the type of sustainability requirements, target that you had mentioned earlier. So are there some in town that you can point to?
Yes. So for Edge has, I think on their website, we are the 13th. We're the 13th project in Nigeria. I know that there are a lot of other projects that are pursuing certification. Maybe they haven't scaled it yet, but they're working on it. But some notable ones are this Blue Water in Oniru. I think developed by Elana and ACA, African Capital Alliance. And I think African Capital Alliance has 2 other projects. One on Alfred Rwani, I think their head office, and one just in front of 4 Points. Tech something, I can't remember. And then Alpha Made has a project called Pearl Garden Estate somewhere in Sango Tedo, to name a few. Some student hostels. But I think, in Lagos, those are the most notable ones. There's another certification body called LEED, which is pretty good as well. There's a building on Kingsway Road, Heritage Place. They've adopted sustainable practices. I think their glass, even if it's all glass, it's a special type of glass that keeps. So you just need to make sure that you're conscious in your design. It's not just making it look nice, but it's using more power than it could.
And do you guys also consider like functionality as side by side as you put your sustainability considerations in designs?
It's very important, because the reality is EDGE stands for excellence in design for greater efficiency. So greater efficiency is functionality, right? Again, what determines function? I'll go back to your car. you put X amount of fuel in it, it doesn't break down over because maybe it doesn't take as much to run than the typical one. They'll say maybe I won't use Benz because Benzes are pretty rugged. It still depends on the brand, but it's a thing. Efficiency means you're not using as much to get the desired level of comfort or functionality that you require. And I think that's in itself, it's everything they say you should do as green has that in mind. They're not saying you should do it just because the environment, the less impact you have on the environment by the way you operate is, it's a function of your functionality. Sorry.
Wow. This is super technical.
But yeah, but that's the way I see it. It's a field I'm still studying, and new technologies coming on. How we'll adapt that to old buildings and new designs. It's a learning curve for me, and I think everybody in society as well.
Right. So I think this brings me to the very final question.
Okay.
So I want to believe that a lot of our viewers are developers or people who work in other real estate development firms.
Yeah.
And for people who before now had not started to practice, bringing sustainability practices into their development and would like to do that, and perhaps might not even have like an expert in-house like yourself, how would you advise they go about incorporating all of these practices into their projects?
Okay, so I'll speak from a more practical approach, which doesn't necessarily have anything to do with certification standards. I used to work for Julius Berger, a construction company, and over the years since I started my practice in the industry, I've always been part of construction. Always had like an eye for it. I've always noticed any site you go to, the most waste generated from a site is formwork. So if you're doing a multi-story building, people typically use wood. Depending on the type of real estate developer, some of them develop themselves. They go to the market and they buy. I would say invest in reusable formwork. It could be steel. There are these very cheap ones. They're almost the same prices as wood, but you import them from China, but you can use them like 100 times. Wood, you can only use 2-3 times. Water beats it, deteriorates, and then that takes out waste from your site, saves you money. You might spend money on your first project like you would normally, but over X amount of projects, you take that cost out, which obviously results in you can retain your profit margin and sell a more competitive product because it's lower, and you took that out of the financial model if you have it. And then sustainable practices, again, Edge itself. Edge is a free software tool by IFC, so you can go on their website and use it to sort of gauge your project. Now, if you don't have, maybe you can't factor in, or you don't have enough skill to, maybe it's not that expensive, but you don't have enough skill to sort of add it to your project, you can run your project through it, and it will advise you on what your project would score if you did go on certification. So you can just adopt the practices that it advises you. Obviously, go to the market and see how the cost of these things compare. Another very big thing is, I say, little practice. Your water supply system, from borehole, underground tank, treatment, try and put it on solar, because the way it works is you have an overhead tank on you just need to create that reservoir during the day, and at night whenever you just run it down, as opposed to, you see some blocks of flats, 4 or 5 buildings, they have to get a generator for the pump. Why do that? Just get a few panels.
Separate meter just for pump.
Exactly. So we take that out, but they need to be factored into the design. And when you're even marketing the product, you can tell people that, oh, you've done this and that. It should beat down your bills and running costs. So people that actually spend this money as, okay, there's this guy that's offering this same product and this one, but this guy has an edge. So those little kinks. And the truth is, there are a lot of younger people, environment, they will just naturally gravitate to products that are more environmentally conscious because it impacts their kids or grandkids and all those stuff. So people are sentimental towards it as well. But there's information online. You don't have to be an expert. What I'd say for me, what helps me is I'm at the cutting edge. I always check, okay, what are the new solar panels? I'm hearing solar panels are going to be 10 times more efficient now and half the price. So these things I can, maybe before somebody has bought old solar panels, but I have that information and I get the company I work for to buy new ones. We already have an edge that, would spend the same capital. So those little things, I think every now and then, just do a bit of research on things like door flush toilets, energy saving bulbs, building materials that insulative in terms of their properties. Your buildings will get too hot, so your homeowners don't spend too much on cooling the building. And then once you implement those practices, sort of use it to market your product, because it also spreads awareness, and it's a good thing. It's not a competitive thing. We all do it. It's good for all of us, in my opinion. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at. There's so much I could say about it, but I think those little quirks, if you pick up from the research those things, it will help your projects a lot. And you're establishing a project, right? If it's a block or flat, you sell it. You as a developer, or you have to keep running it. If you're coughing up money for diesel and all of that, you need to find a way to reduce your running costs for the clients, for the customers, and also yourself. So it's very important that it's not just you're doing the right thing and it's not going to save you anything. It will save you a lot of money if you do the financial model.
Wow, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
It's been a loaded, very technical discussion. And
Thank you.
I know for sure that we have the right audience for this discussion.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Osarogie.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
I do hope that our viewers have learned so much, and going forward, for people who are in the real estate development space, we expect to see a lot more green buildings. We expect to see a lot more sustainability practices, in our real estate projects, so that we can, in the long term, save
the environment, and save some money.
Save the environment and save even money.
Yeah.
So thanks again, Osarogie,
Always
for
a pleasure.
joining us.
Always a pleasure.
We look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Till then, bye-bye.
Bye.